Hey, what's happening, y'all? Matt here, and today I am finishing up with that latest project y'all been watching me live stream and do stuff with. Which be this, the V100MGHB. Got all the electronics wired up, which was on my last stream. I did have to cut that stream off a little bit early because I ran into a couple problems. The tone pots weren't exactly working right, and I was having some intermittent issues with the bridge pickup. And all that came to a head right as I had to leave to go pick up the kid from daycare. So that, yeah, I ended up resolving that off stream. There was just a wire that was kind of a cold solder from the bridge pickup to the volume pot, so I fixed that easy. And then it was the one of the lugs on each of the tone pots I had flip-flopped. So I went in and adjusted those couple things, and it worked fine. I actually took this to work yesterday, and we all went over it. So, yeah, let's get started on what this turned out to be. You silly mutt. So, at the end of the day, it turned out mostly like I was planning. The only thing that turned into an issue was with doing a face flip. I couldn't pull that off without modifying the pickup. So the type of cable that's running from these pickups, that's built into the pickups, is one of these. This is a braided wire, single conductor wire, which works fine until you're trying to like do phase flipping and different things like that, and then you end up in this situation because in order for that to work, your ground wire has to be a separate actual ground wire for the pickup. It can't also be the ground wire for the casing. But the gist of the matter is I can't do that mod without then modifying the pickup and taking off the casing and finding where that ground wire is and then connecting an actual dedicated ground wire, and then soldering something else to work as the actual casing ground wire. Becomes a whole thing. I didn't want to modify these pickups, so I just didn't do that. And then, but yeah, I switched out the pickups to these. They're Wilkinson R series. I need to ask the boss what the actual name for these are. We are selling them independently, I think like a little over $200 for a set. So you can go to the Silvertone website and order yourself a set of these pickups if you like them. And they're pretty good. They're modeled after the old like kind of Gibson Deluxe Seth Lover design pickups, so Alnico magnets, and the bridge pickup is just slightly hotter, just a little bit more output to compensate for the neck. Switching wise, you can see I had to take the little circle plate off of my toggle switch. The new toggle switch, the shaft was too short for those to both fit on. But I actually think it looks a little bit better just being able to see the wood finish. And then I've got my 4 push-pull pots on here. So I did, on our volumes, I put treble bleeds. I've just become a fan of treble bleeds. They work really well for evening out that volume roll-off and just allowing you to keep some sparkle as you're decreasing the signal you're sending to the amp to clean things up. They just work great, and I like using them. So put those on there, but I did something different. Because these mini hums can tend to be a little bit bright, I wired them so that by default the treble bleed switch is off. So when the push pulls are down, no treble bleed. They just work like normal volume pots. When you pull the push pull up, that's when we engage the treble bleed and start getting some of that effect when we start rolling the volume back. For the tone pots, I did something very different. So in my wiring, normally you'd wire from your pickup to your volume controls, and then that would be paired with the corresponding tone control, and then from that would go to your switch, from your switch to your output. So it's similar. I am running from the pickup to the volume pots, and I'm running from the volume pots up to the switch, and then from the output of the switch down to the first. I forget which one I wired first in the signal. I think the top one is what I wired first in the signal. To that tone pot, and then down to this one. And the reason I did that is because I changed this from independent tone controls that are basically low-pass filters for each pickup into being a master two-band EQ, one being a high-pass filter, the other being a low-pass filter. And the top tone control for that would normally be for the neck pickup is now a high-pass filter, and the bottom tone control that would normally be for the bridge pickup is a standard like low pass filter. Now I did put push pulls on that so that in addition to having that master EQ, I can pull up on that and I can change the frequency that the EQ curve is occurring at. So, in order to do that, I just changed the capacitor values. So according to my calculations, the low pass filter, I used a 0.022 microfarad capacitor, which should put the high frequency roll off at about 4.8 kilohertz. And then I also used a 0.047 microfarad capacitor, which should change the frequency roll off to about 2 kilohertz. Now for my high pass filter, I used a 1 nanofarad capacitor, which should have the low frequency roll off at about 100 hertz, and a 680 picofarad, I believe it is, like about half a nanofarad, which should put the low frequency roll off somewhere between 150 to 250 hertz. Now, the problem with those calculations, when you're calculating the frequency that a capacitor would create the roll off at, is it's very circuit dependent. So depending on the resistance and all the other components you have in the circuit, it can wildly change what those frequencies are. So I used a calculator on a website to get a general gist of what those should be, but I don't know that that's what it actually ended up as. In fact, I think I'm going to do another video where I take this guitar and go use a DI box to go straight into either Reaper or Pro Tools and put a EQ or something on there as a plugin that lets me see the frequencies that are actually coming through, and then start messing with controls and seeing what actually is happening. Because this is something I've never done before, and I haven't really seen it on any other guitars. So I'm very curious in how this applied in theory versus how it actually applies in real life. So I'm curious to do that experiment. If you're curious to see that experiment, let me know in the comments, and yeah, we'll see if we can make it happen. So I think that'd be interesting. But yeah, that's what I did to this. I think it looks so good. We were all really fawning over this at work. Cool. All right. Well, with all that said, let's plug this sucker in and see what we actually get. All right. And so for the signal flow, we're basically just going from the guitar straight into the Katana, and then taking a line out from the Katana to my handy recorder that's connected to the camera. So all that should be something we're fairly familiar with, along with the, we all, for the most part, know what the Katana sounds like. Also, I'm using the same presets that I used for the last video. So all this should be very comparable. So let's start with our bridge pickup. move on to the neck pickup. Excellent. Moving on to the middle position, both pickups. Interesting. Okay, what happens if we what happens if we add a little crunch to that? Starting with the bridge pickup, little crunch. All right, moving on to the neck pickup. Cool. And now the middle position, both pickups. Alright, so now we've had it with the little crunch, let's see with some high gain what we can get, and if this guitar can really rock. And we'll start with our bridge pickup. not bad. How does that translate to the neck? Middle position. Interesting. All right, let's switch back to clean and then test out some of our controls. Okay, so now we're back on the clean channel where we can try out some of these controls that are wired up and see what that ends up getting us. So let's start with the bridge pickup and start with our treble bleed switch. So I've got it where it's bypassed when the push-pull is down. Okay, so that's the roll off. And if I pull that up, and it kind of evens out the roll off a little bit, and it definitely preserves the sparklies. Okay, so if we switch to the neck pickup and try the same thing. Okay, let's pull up on that. Interesting. So now, if we go in the middle position, we can work on kind of creating a blend. So what if we pull up on the bridge pickup and roll that back to maintain some sparklies, and then we keep our neck, and then we roll, well, if we roll back our neck, keeping it down so that it gets mellower. Okay, what if we do the opposite? Keep those, boop, all right. So we can get some really cool blended tones. Now I guess we need to look at our tone controls. So the bottom one that would normally be for the bridge should function just like we're used to a tone control functioning. And it does. Now I put the push wheel in there for different frequencies. So if I pull up on this while it's all the way rolled back, we should hear a pretty significant change. So as soon as I pull up on that, it gets significantly darker. Right, now if we roll that up, let's play with our other control. So that's definitely different. Like at first it kind of tricks my ears. I start thinking it's sounding more muffled. But then I listen closely. I'm like, no, it's just lower output because it's losing all that low end. And it's still keeping like the... It's still keeping the honkiness. Okay, now if we pull up on it, so I feel like when it's pulled up, and I think this is how I wired it on purpose. It's been a minute. And when it's pulled up, it lets through a little bit more of the lows. No, I've got that backwards. When it's down, it lets more through. When it's pulled up, it's way honkier. I mean, I definitely hear a difference, but I would be curious to know if y'all can hear a difference and what you think that difference is. And then maybe later, like I said, I can do another video where we're pulling that up on a spectrum analyzer and actually seeing what it's doing. So then we can start blending that. Okay. So what if we just filter out a touch of those lows and we keep our highs. Then we can roll off some more of the highs. Shoot, what if we roll them both all the way? Well, if we did them both super extreme. Telephone guitar. Hello? Who's that? Yeah, I think both of those controls are going to be best used in moderation. Interesting. Well, that about wraps it up for this video. Look at these two beauties. So this was a fun project, and it was an extensive one with all the live streams and then all the shorts that have been generated, and then multiple videos, and probably another one involving this and those high and low pass filters with the spectrum analyzer. Lots of going on with these, but it's been cool, and I think at the end of the day I got a very good usable instrument that looks absolutely gorgeous and plays phenomenally. So yeah, I'm pretty stoked. I'm excited. It turned out well, and I hope y'all enjoyed getting to go along on the ride with me and checking all this out. Lights is still coming up, scheduled to release July 31st, and I'm plugging away, getting all the stuff ready for that. And between that and other guitar stuff, we're just going to keep rocking and rolling. And there's the potential for some major announcements, but it's all still kind of as far as Audio Mutt and some potential business things down the line. But I'm going to keep that under my hat until I know for sure, and because I don't want to set everything up, make big announcements, and everything fall through. But I'm working on some big things and trying to make some moves. So we will see what happens. Anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in. It was a blast, and yeah, we'll see you next time. So thanks, appreciate you, and have a good one.